All right, jumping right into things. We're going to be going over an article today, and I'm not by myself. I have Dave and Joe here, but we are going over an article talking about protein. So the actual article is called Toward Harmonizing Protein Data in Food Composition Databases, Evaluating Perspectives, Methods, and Implications. So it's really interesting. The reason I wanted to cover this study, or it's not really a study, it's an article, more like a systematic review, but not technically. They're just looking at a lot of different information, but they were looking at how inaccurate food labels are, specifically protein in this case. And I think this is really important for people to know. I feel like a lot of people were unaware of this fact, and that's why I wanted to cover it. So what we have, big picture, is how grossly different it can be amongst different types of protein. And so if you didn't know what they do, it says protein content in foods has historically been estimated by multiplying measured nitrogen content with a universal nitrogen to protein conversion factor, NCF, of 6.25. I didn't know any of this, to be honest. I knew that
Nope.
food labels were inaccurate. Like if you were reading through some of the other information, it says that in the U.S., food labels can be up to 20% off in either direction. Like that is the allowable limit for food companies. And if you think about it, if you are let's say a diet brand, or like you're trying to be a healthier brand, and you find out it's 200 calories, why wouldn't you go 20% less and put that on the label? So anyway, very interesting information here. But let's go around real quick. Joe, what did you find interesting when you were reading through this?
Well, how they calculated it, for one. As I was going through, I was trying to think of how this could apply to people, and I think for the most part, casually people that are counting, I don't think it'll be that much of a detriment. But I do think that it's good to know because it's for those who like want to get the exact protein number or obsess over numbers and quantities, that you're estimating anyway. And if food labels are off and your estimations are off anyway, and even when you're calculating, your macro exact number can fluctuate. There's a lot of fluctuation there. So to me, like the main takeaway would have been like not worrying about set on an exact number of protein, but more of like a line. Like as long as you cross this line for the day or whatever, then that's all you need to worry about. Even though like you read this paper and it seems like I was a little bit confused for a while reading it, like what is all going on right here? But then I thought, okay, if unless you're like super counting, like like going into bodybuilding shows, then mostly you just got to know that there's a lot of variance and just worry about a bottom line of what you need to hit. And this also made me think about calorie counters and all of the wearables that we've gone over too, and how wildly inaccurate those are, and how you don't need to worry about the calorie counter on the thing because that's always going to be pretty much off. But just get a roundabout number. But yeah, as far as this, that's kind of just it with my protein thoughts of not exactly harping on the exact number because a lot of these things are going to be inaccurate anyway.
Yeah, and I think it should ease the mind of people who, are diving into macro counting or tracking in general. And I've always made this argument too, and because I know some people who are not a little bit psycho, like crazy psycho, about tracking every single thing that goes in their mouth. And that's fine if you have like a body composition goal or like whatever, and that's something that you want to do. But I think it's funny because it's like you're not even truly accurate. And I'll talk about like what my biggest takeaway from that is. But like I've always talked about, if I make a protein shake in a blender and I pour that protein shake into a cup, I'm losing a little bit of the shake inside the blender and I'm losing a little bit of shake inside the cup. But I'm going to say I got my 50 grams of protein out of that, right? And it's like, well, you probably washed at least 10 grams of that down the sink, or maybe 5, something like that. And does it matter? To me, I don't think it matters all that much, but it's just kind of pointing out to like, it doesn't matter that much. And you're not as accurate as you think you are when you're tracking because you've been given an impossible task. You've been given a task that's like up to companies whether or not they want to report 20% up or down. And then protein, apparently they can't even track it all that well. Like it's just a hard thing to do. What'd you think, Dave?
Yeah, similar things to Joe and what you're saying with tracking too. And I've tracked strictly in the past. I've tracked loosely, and what I find though is like it all evens out in the long run anyways. If you're eating relatively clean in those things, I don't think this should be a concern to anyone, like Joe's saying, for people that are, like we talked about the EO3 elements, people that are eating meat and vegetables in multiple meals, like you're hitting your bases probably if you're having protein throughout the day. But if people are strictly tracking, there's so much variance in that anyways. Even if you take a whole food, which is going to be better than anything, like does this piece of steak have the exact same fat as the next steak next to it that's even the same weight and everything? And that's where you can get totally neurotic over it, and it just doesn't seem to make a difference for most people. And then you start putting in mixed foods and those things like trail mix sandwiches, some of the things I mentioned in the article. It's like it can get wildly less accurate in a hurry. You think you have this tight control over it, and that's where tracking though the metrics that are most important to you. If you're trying to lose weight, is the scale moving that way? If yes, then don't worry about exactly how much protein you're having. If you're getting stronger, if you feel good, if you're recovering well, if you're checking those boxes, then you don't need to get so caught up in that, because the recommendations already bake in a level of error too. They're off of, they already factor in some of that error that's out there if you're aiming for a specific amount of protein. I do think people that are on the low end should be aware of this though. If someone's like really struggling to get even the low end of protein, like Joe's saying, then maybe you want to set that number a little bit higher just to make sure if you're on the low end. But for most people that are eating generally healthy, I don't think it's something you need to get too worked up over.
Yeah, and that's a big thing I want people to take away, is like not to freak out about all of the tracking and wearables and nutrition stuff that we can do these days, because none of it's going to be all that accurate anyway. Like if you're stressing out about not getting enough deep sleep the previous night, it's like, well, how accurate was the deep sleep tracking? And I talked a little bit about that in the last podcast. Like I trust it to a certain degree, but I assess how I feel first, if I'm looking at a sleep tracker. Same with nutrition, and I think you nailed it on the head, Dave. It's like, if you're trying to lose weight or gain muscle, the only real thing that matters is going to be the scale, like your body weight, right? And so if you are following some sort of nutrition plan and the body and the scale is not moving, it could be these other things that are just, you're on the low end of where you should be, and you need to bump it up higher because of all of these margins that have been put into food. But a couple other points I had on this was my personal opinion. Like I read the article, and there's like some things on like there's even variance within meat and everything. But I just feel like if you're eating chicken breast, you're pretty safe there. Like you're getting a large amount of protein. There's not much else in it. I do think steak can vary wildly. So I think if you're getting a lot of your protein from meats, I'm going to say that you're fine, because I in all honesty, you're probably getting more protein than you need if you're eating meat. But if you are, not even like vegan or vegetarian, just if you're getting most of your proteins from like packaged things, if you're really like, oh yeah, I want that 7 grams of protein in this packaged muffin that I had, and on repeat, you're like, oh, here's this pack of goldfish, has 4 grams of protein. And I don't actually know any of the nutritional data on any of these things, but if you're like factoring those things in as like pushing you over, let's say you needed 150 grams of protein in a day, and you're like, yeah, 2 packs of goldfish and a muffin, I'm over at 20 grams of protein. It's like, I'm going to say that that's not true, and that protein's probably not all that much usable. And that's the second point I wanted to make. And they mentioned that is there is like a protein digestibility scale that I think is really important that people should pay attention to. It's actually got like a crazy acronym, and we've talked about it on the podcast like over the years, if I can see it. It's like PDCAAS or the DIAAS systems. You can look those up on your own, but ultimately it's just giving you a digestibility rating, like how much can your body actually use from different forms of protein. And I think that this is where it's really important to pay attention to when you are consuming protein. And eggs are the standard. Like they are the benchmark for everything else. And so if you're eating an egg, you're basically getting 100% of the protein. But then we go back to, what was it, a big egg or was it a small egg? Was it 5 grams or was it 7 grams? Yeah, like what is the egg? But to be honest, I don't think it matters all that much because your body's able to utilize so much of the egg. And then stepping down from there, you have whey protein, milk proteins, then you have meats, and then you get into plant proteins. And the highest on the plant side is pea protein. It has a very like high digestibility rating. But I would say get it from all those other sources if you can. I've talked about over the years, my body doesn't do great with dairy, so I unfortunately can't get a lot of protein from that source. But I do rely heavily on eggs and meat because that's where I think I can get a lot. But I think anything packaged, like I almost don't even pay attention to the protein. In my mind, like if I'm keeping just a back of my head, like running tally of my protein in the day, I will just kind of assess like, okay, how many eggs did you eat today? What kind of meat did you have today? And then I'm never looking at, if I had some sort of packaged whatever, or say I ate rice, say it's not even like a bad thing. Maybe I had rice with dinner. I'm not real concerned about the 5 to 10 grams of protein that might be in the rice serving, just because I don't think it's the best source of protein anyway. So I think there's a lot of things that you can look into, and then it's just, how do I look, how do I feel, and what does the scale say when you're trying to make these body composition changes through nutrition?
Yeah, I'm thinking about the timing of it too, because that's, we talk about eating, digestion is such a big piece of it, and getting enough meaningful protein in a single feeding is important too if your goals are to put on as much muscle as possible. So if you're trying to nickel and dime protein throughout the day and you feel like you're barely getting there, you're probably better off getting a bigger, at least a meaningful amount in a single meal. And that's why, we recommend, spacing meals out and giving your digestion a break. There's benefits to that, but instead of the downsides that can come with like snacking and trying to hit these frequent small protein hits throughout the day, making sure you're getting at least a couple, meaningful, solid meals there where you're getting a good enough substantial amount of protein.
Yeah, and the amino acids, like the best ones you're going to get are usually from meat anyway. I don't know what the profile is on pea, but I know we've gone over some amino acids in the past, and like BCAAs are pretty much BS unless you really struggle on some of those amino acids, like if you're on purely plant protein or plant diet. But leucine, we've talked about in the past that how important leucine is, and eggs, once again, eggs win, are one of the biggest, have a lot of that. And then, anytime I buy protein now, then the first thing I check is the leucine count, how it should be, like 2 grams?
2 grams to
serving?
stimulate muscle protein synthesis. And so, eggs, whey, and pea protein actually has the highest amount of leucine. But I'll be honest, I've talked a lot about pea protein because I can't have whey, but I'm getting away from it altogether. I've gone back to, honestly, what I've taken a lot over the years, which is beef protein isolate, specifically from the brand Equip. It doesn't have as much leucine, but I'd rather double up a serving from them than continue to take pea protein for the rest of my life, because I just don't think it's the healthiest option, But it's good in like a pinch. Like I always have some pea protein on standby for like a shake or whatever.
Yeah. So those were all kind of interesting, and the estimates were kind of crazy. And like you get more into variables of the more ingredients that are in the food that like trail mixes and stuff that they were talking about and other things, and the more variance that it'll be.
And on the hierarchy for where most people listen, if their goal is performance and their goal is weight loss or weight gain, like we were talking earlier, calories are still above protein even in that. And they talked on some of the calorie inaccuracies at some of these places too. So that's knowing that, especially if you're eating out a lot or if you're eating some of these packaged foods or trying to have a healthy ice cream or something, just know that there's variance in it. And the calories are going to be a bigger driver for that. Make sure you're hitting that first, and the protein is going to be a close second though in terms of recovery and performance and all those things. But it's what the calorie inaccuracies they reported were even crazier at some of these restaurants and everything.
Oh yeah, restaurants are probably the worst because they might not even factor in how much oil they slather on the the cooking surface that they're using. They're like, no, this doesn't count. It's like, well, that's 400 calories of oil, fat.
It's a good estimate. I know some of the places have a good calculator, like Subway and Chipotle also have like
sandwiches places,
Yeah, like Chipotle will have a good counter, but like you don't know how heavy-handed that person is. Sometimes you get snubbed when you get your double steak, but then there's other times where this guy's like, I'm going to hook you up with a ton of steak, and you're like, yeah, my man, but that's probably an extra 200 calories right there. So it's a decent estimate, and that's why like when I count nowadays, there's an app I use. It's mostly AI. I have it. All it does is protein and calories, And protein, I make sure to get at or above my baseline, which I mentioned before. And then calories, I just try and get close to whatever the number is. I go a little bit under on the counter, but I try and get, stay within like 50 grams or 50, of my calories. And like, that's pretty close enough. It's not going to be exact. I know it's not going to be exact, but if I go over on protein, I don't really care. And like some of the frustrations with counting in the past is as well, like with the AI, it does pretty good about finding stuff for you. But I know in the past with counters, and you've mentioned it before with like beef variants, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this beef. All right, now I got to look it up. All right, is it chuck roast or is it rump roast? All right, well, this chuck roast has this amount of fat and this chuck roast has this amount of fat. And then, wait, is it weighed cooked or raw or cooked? Like all of these variants is like,
all
you
these
don't know.
things I hate.
There's just so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I
like,
hate tracking so much.
yeah. So that's why like the AI one that I use, I think is just, it gets you 90% of the way there. That's sort of the whole thing. You don't like, unless you're really, really high level, which most people aren't, that approximation just to know how those things work and just work around the limitations and set your goals accordingly.
Yeah. I mean, I have I know what the research says, but like my minimum on protein is probably much lower than what the research would say. Like I'm pretty happy if I get like, let's say 100 to 120 grams. Like I'm still calling it good that day. And I have no issues with body comp or how I look. I'm happy in all those areas. So it's like, oh no, you need to be getting 180. I'm like, sounds like a lot. That's a lot of work. And I'm not shooting for 100 grams a day. I'm just saying if I finish a day and I'm like, I only probably got 100 grams of protein today, but it was all meat and eggs. I'm like, that's better than 150 grams of all this other crap that I'm trying to factor in. And that's all I focus on in a day. And it's not really with targets. It's just, what'd you have for breakfast, lunch, and I'm just kind of like tallying up the protein and making sure, like it's that 350 micro that I talked about. It's like, I'm trying to make sure, are there around 50 grams of protein in this meal? Cool. Then I'm good. I'm good for the day. And if I only end up getting 2 of those meals as good as they should be, I'm still happy. And things are typically fine. I haven't seen some detriment. Who knows? Maybe I'd look like a Liver King if I had focused on getting 180 to 200 grams of protein every single meal. You never know. Eat some. I think all you have to do is eat some bull testicle, and you'll look like that. That's how it works.
Yeah.
Joe, when are you coming to Dallas again? Because you mentioned Chipotle. We have a bowls place.
So I love Chipotle. I go back quarterly for military stuff, and I always eat it like 2 or 3 times. I can confidently say whenever I'm in Dallas, I never eat Chipotle because I'm either going to Freebirds or something similar because Texas has their own like level up of Chipotle.
That's what I'm saying, man. I don't eat at Chipotle ever because guess who opened up a bowls place in my town? Marty.
Oh, it's just, man, that guy's just the king of everything.
Dude, he opened up a bowl place, and it is 10 times better than Chipotle. And he made a decision to not use seed oils, and so they only cook stuff in
avocado,
no, like fat, like what's it called?
Tallow.
Yeah, beef tallow or something like that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's amazing. Like we used to go to Chipotle frequently, and then we took my kids to this place a few times, and now they're like, Chipotle sucks. I'm like, Chipotle does suck. Like Chipotle, I mean, it doesn't actually suck, but it tastes like fast food in comparison to this place. This would be more like what you cook yourself at home. So next time you're in town, we're going to go.
Like,
and then we'll
6 months, I think. Yeah.
Well, just count down the days because now you can't even hit up all his restaurants in one day. You have to like
challenge accepted.
Because he's got a Mexican place now. He's got the breakfast place, the main place, the bowls place. Like that's at least 4 or 5 restaurants in a day. I don't even know how you do it.
It's a 1050 micro day.
Yeah, we'll have to. We'll spread it out over 2 days. How about that?
That's fine. That's fine.
Cool. Well, hopefully people got something out of this. I mean, ultimately, pay attention to how you feel, how you look, what the scale says, and at the end of the day, know that these companies don't have your best interest in mind at all. Because if you look at, Dave, you mentioned ice cream. Like, I guarantee a healthy ice cream company, within that 20% rule, if they're going to go 20% on the low end every time, Like you can just go ahead and guarantee that that's what's happening with any healthy ice cream that you're selecting, is that if it says 200 calories, you can bet that it's 20% higher than that, right? And so you just have to keep all these things in mind. Like, what's the goal of the company? The goal of the company is they don't actually care about your health. The goal of the company is to sell ice cream to
That
people who think it's healthy, you know?
Yeah, that was like Halo's whole marketing plan. Is like they sold pints of ice cream so that you could not you could eat the entire pint. Like they sold us like, here, eat this whole pint because it's only X amount of calories. Because I mean they're estimating low, but also they spin it up so much that it's actually aerated. So if you actually weigh it, it weighs less than other pints of ice cream because it's just air inside. But that's the whole marketing thing, is that they just want you to buy and eat the entire pint so that you can go back and buy and eat another whole pint.
Oh, that's where it gets even worse. If you're like, this is healthy, I'll eat 2 of them.
Look at the protein in this. You know, they're
Yeah.
eating full fat ice cream.
So much protein. All right, Joe, you said you had a question. Is there a
Yeah.
question for me today?
So, if what would be your guys's first step advice, overall advice, whatever, however you want to take it, of okay, you have somebody that is absolutely brand new and wants to get into resistance training. They haven't done any sort of working out before. They haven't done any sort of lifting. What should be their first steps? Whether it's something they buy, somewhere they go, something they get, something they subscribe to, whatever our initial thoughts on, like, you know, whatever the couch to 5K is, but for, you know, resistance training overall, you know, that kind of fitness. What would you say would be your initial thought process and advice to that person?
Yeah, and just so everybody knows, Joe actually surprised us with this question. Didn't tell us beforehand. So our real off-the-cuff thoughts, I'll start. And funny enough, I've been thinking about this a lot because my boys are starting to lift, specifically my oldest, William. He is 13 years old. He's starting to lift a little bit more, you know, into football and everything else. So I've been thinking, like, how do I want him to start? Because I started with basic bodybuilding programs and a lot of barbell stuff. But how I'm wanting him to start is with dumbbells. And so that would be my recommendation to anyone, is I would do full body splits. I would not do singular muscle groups. Like, I had an arm day for years, and what a waste of time. You know what I mean? Like, it was fine because I consistently trained like 2 hours a day, 6 days a week, never missed when I was younger. And so it ended up being fine. But if you're like pressed for time in any capacity, I think that trying to focus on the bicep or the tricep or upper back, that's a waste of time. So anyway, I would do full body splits and I would use dumbbells. You know, getting into it any further, you might have to find a program that can do something like that. But that's what I would do. And so when I say full body split, something that has a little bit of push, a little bit of pull, and lower body, all with dumbbells. So if you did, you know, dumbbell bench press, dumbbell rows, and, you know, or front squats, like dumbbells on the shoulders, right? Even if you just did those 3 exercises, whatever, 4 sets of 10 each one, 3 sets of 10 each one, 15, depending on the dumbbells that you have. That's where I would start. I'd start with dumbbells. And the main reason I say dumbbells is because of the unilateral strength that it requires, right? Like, we're working one arm at a time, one leg at a time. We're not using a barbell where one side can actually get out of balance or compensate for a weaker side. So I prefer dumbbells at the start, especially when we're building a foundation. And that's why I'm doing it with my boys, is because I want them a really strong foundation. I don't want to throw a barbell on their back. And I'm not saying that we won't. I just want a really strong foundation, with dumbbells being kind of like dumbbells being the foundation and then barbell being more the accessory, when it's typically seen in reverse, where it's like, no, barbell's the foundation and dumbbells are the accessory. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on that. How about you, Dave?
Yeah, I think movement proficiency above all. So making sure before trying to load things, and I think kettlebells and dumbbells are definitely more forgiving to teach some of that, but making sure you know how to do a full range of motion squat. You can do a push-up. You can do some of those things before trying to jump into all the equipment. Obviously, if you have resources to work with someone who knows what they're doing and can help teach you through that, that's going to accelerate that learning curve quite a bit. If you don't, there's so many good resources out there now to kind of learn what those things are on your own. But if you're adding load or speed or anything too quick before you even can create proper tension through your system and know how to connect your core to your legs and to your arms, and it's needed like a push-up and a squat and a lunge and all those things, then you could do more harm than good by going too quick. And the second thing, along with the actual programming logistics, I think programming is so forgiving. The thing to be encouraged with if you're just starting out is that I agree, I wouldn't do, like, you don't need to do body part splits, full body. You don't need as much frequency or volume, especially as someone who's been training for 20 years. There's a lot of very forgiving range in those first couple of years as you're getting into it. So finding a program that you do enjoy, not having to, don't just follow something because you feel like you have to. I think if you can find something that you enjoy and gets results, is going to be really helpful too.
Yeah. My initial thought when I was thinking of this was, especially if they're an adult, 30, 40, 50 years old, and they've never had a fitness routine or anything like that before, my number one thing was establish the routine. Do whatever you can to establish the routine. So pick something that you're going to do that you think you can do. It doesn't matter what it is. And I feel like to do that, I would have to join. I think they would have to join a gym and go to a class or physically go to a place.
Blasphemy. No.
Well, I know, right? But I mean, you have said it in the past that, like, in order to build a habit, just go to the gym. You don't even need to work out. Like, if you're going to build a habit, just go to the gym, walk in, have a drink of water, go to the bathroom, and leave. And then the next day, maybe you'll actually do something. And then if you do that every single day for 5 days a week, you start attending classes, and then a month has gone by, and you've gone to the gym 5 days a week for an entire month, and now you're starting to make that a normal thing. And then after the habit is established, then you can think about, okay, after I've tried these classes, then you pick, the body weight or the dumbbell thing, and then start from there. Start from whatever you're going to do to start the habit, and then build your base with those type of movements is probably what I would say first step.
Yeah, you have to. And I mean, I always say if anybody's just trying to get into something, just do something. It doesn't really matter what it is. Set of push-ups today, whatever you can, just to get the ball rolling, I think is the most important thing. And then if you are older getting started, I think everything else applies. The only caveat I would say is if you are looking for any kind of athletic development, I would definitely get a kettlebell involved, probably a kettlebell swing. I worked all summer with my boys and their friends on hips, just how to use your hips. And the kettlebell is such an amazing, the kettlebell swing specifically. And we don't even have to like get into like the kettlebell as like this, weird quasi like spiritual, thing that a lot of people treat the kettlebell as. It's just the kettlebell swing. You don't have to worry about elbows and wrists if you're doing barbell cleans and everything, because that's what a lot of football teams want to do is like a lot of cleans. And there's nothing wrong with those. But for people getting started, a kettlebell swing, there's no better way to teach someone how to get their hips involved. Because everyone, when they start to do kettlebells, and you'll see this if you go to Globo gyms, is they're just going to be using their arms. They're going to be using their arms maybe 80%, hips 20%, or arms 100%. They haven't really learned how to explode with the hips to make that kettlebell go up. Like when I'm doing a kettlebell swing, my arms are just there to hold it in place. That's all it does. My arms aren't lifting at all when I'm doing a kettlebell swing. You have to be able to explode with the hips. So if you are looking for any athletic development, that's the only thing I would add there, because I'm doing that with my boys quite a bit, so they understand how to use their hips. Because if you can use your hip, you can throw a ball faster, you can move faster, you can cut faster, and so any kind of athletic development, you're going to have to learn how to get your hips involved. But I'd say people like in their 40s and 50s aren't really looking to increase their athletic development. But you should be. Just
a quick kettlebell tip hack for if you don't know if you're using your hips enough or if you want to. 2 ways to do it. One, use 2 kettlebells instead of just one, because you're not going to be able to do your arm lift if you have 2 kettlebells in 2 different hands. I guess you can also do a super heavy Russian swing, but if you don't want to do that, the best way I've found is to strap a band to a rack or something stable, like that's not going to move, and then step over it with the band pulling you from behind, from between your legs, and then reenact a swing that way. Because you're not going to be able to pull anything with your hands. You're going to have to completely focus on your glutes and your hips and just do those for 10, 15 as explosively as you can, because all it's doing is pulling from behind your hips, and you're not going to be able to pull with your arms. I can share a video a photo that I made a long time ago on our Instagram. We can reshare that one.
Cool. Good tips overall. All right. I think we're going to round this one out. We'll have some, I'm actually really looking forward to some of the future podcasts we have planned. We're getting a little bit into some of the things we were talking about here at the end, like what keeps someone motivated, what keeps someone sticking around in their training, and some other great stuff. So make sure you're tuning in future weeks for all of our Garage Gym athletes out there. We do appreciate you doing the workouts, sticking around, being part of the community. Thank you so much. If anyone is listening and you want to join our community, you can go to garagegymathlete.com and sign up, do a free trial, and join us on the back end and try some of our training. But that's it for this one. Remember, if you don't kill comfort, comfort will kill you.